is guaranteed. Viewer discretion is advised.
Yo, diggity yo.
Yo.
How is it going?
Yeah, it's going well. It's going well. Not much has changed since last time we recorded, which was about half an hour ago.
Yeah, we're batch recording today, so this is our third episode we're recording today. And I'm really excited about today's case. I found it by mistake again. It's all because I was watching a film and I was like, hold up, this is cool and I'm sure this is a true story, and it was. So then I looked at the case.
I'm wondering if because obviously you didn't tell me what the case was about, but I got some inklings and I'm wondering if I've got the film right.
Maybe. So it's
head.
very much pop culture today, and it's sort of like pop culture meets true crime. So there was a film called Hustlers released in 2016. Have you seen it?
Jennifer Lopez.
Yeah.
I have seen it. It's a very good film.
It's such a good film, and she's brilliant in it. And I looked because she looks fantastic, and the character who she's playing was one of the slightly older women in real life. And I was like, wow, how old was JLo when she filmed this? She was 50. She looks so good.
It's funny, like I was having a conversation with Alex earlier. Well, it was in like, sort of our group chats, me, Alex, Mikey and Gilbert, and we were talking about Jennifer Coolidge.
Sorry, my poppers have come undone.
You floozy. We were talking about Jennifer Coolidge and American Pie, and then we got onto like obviously how old she was supposed to be in that. When she filmed that, she was 38, and Alex was like, right, great.
Which one was Jennifer Coolidge?
Stifler's mum.
Oh, of course. Oh my God, yeah, that's awesome.
She is iconic.
So, as I said, JLo played one of the main parts. So did Constance Wu. So Constance Wu played... sorry, scrap that. I've completely messed up my notes. Ignore me. Just say they're absolutely brilliant in it. It's on Netflix. That's what I wanted to say, and I messed up straight away. Right, so there's quite a lot of quotes in this. So I'm going to replace swear words with...
Made up words.
Well, no, not made up words, but other words.
Yeah.
So just so you know.
We'll know what it's supposed to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the film was based on Jessica Presler's New York Magazine article from December in 2015 called The Hustlers at Scores. And it revolves around the accounts of two women, Rosie Keogh and Samantha Barbash, who has since changed her last name. And I'm going to concentrate on these two women in my case. There were other women involved, but I'm just going to concentrate on these two. And, you know, the article's very good because it was based on the point of view of these two determined women who formed a deep friendship, which ultimately turned nefarious. And the film highlights the idea that women are valued for their beauty above all and men are valued for their money and success and power, filmmaker Scafaria says. So the rules of the clubs that they work in basically parallel the rules of the world, just in a sort of smaller place. So I'm going to start by telling you a bit about Rosie and Samantha to give you a full picture of their upbringings. And I would just like to point out that I'm wearing a Hustler t-shirt because one of the clubs I'm going to be talking about is the Hustler Club in New York.
Well, there you go.
And Jimmy and I went to the Hustler store in San Diego when we were filming. We had a few hours off. So we went to Hustler and we were going to go to a strip club, but it was shut. So we had to go to another one. So that's just who we are as people. So Rosie was brought up in Rockland County, which is around an hour and a half's drive from New York City. Mm-hmm. And she was raised by her elderly grandparents after her parents, who were Cambodian refugees, left her and her brother and just took off to Atlantic City.
Oh, wow, okay.
So according to her interviews, Rosie was a wild child. Mm-hmm. Same. She used to buy candy in bulk and sell it at school for profit.
I mean,
so she's
I didn't buy candy. I bought cigarettes and sold cigarettes for 50p each.
There we go.
You know, entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's it. It is entrepreneurial. So she hung out with a tough crowd. She had dodgy boyfriends, same, and got into fights at school. I mean, it's nothing crazy wild. No. It's, you know, it's what most teenagers do, really. According to Rosie, she dropped out of school and at 17 got a job at the New City Diner in order to supplement her grandparents' small income. Many of her customers were employees of Lace, which was a nearby gentleman's club. And one night, one of Lace's managers gave Rosie a $20 tip on a $20 check and suggested she come by the club if she was interested in making more money, which obviously caught her attention. Yeah. Back in the early noughties, the industry of gentlemen's clubs was going through a bit of a cultural moment. So girls were taking their clothes off in front of an audience. It was seen as sexually liberating and financially empowering. And around that time, there was things like Girls of the Playboy Mansion on the TV. So it almost was a resurgence in that kind of industry, but very much with girls in charge.
Yes, yeah.
And New York City clubs like Scores had successfully marketed themselves as a naughty but harmless night out for men and women, even with celebrities openly photographed hanging out in these places. So it wasn't the whole seedy gentleman's club. It was like, look where I am. I'm at, Hustler or Scores or sort of the equivalent. There was even an HBO series at this time called G-String Divas.
No, I don't remember.
No, I don't remember that. It might not have been over here, which Rosie recalled watching. So Rosie went to Lace, lied about her age, and got a job in the club, where she recalled making $500 to $1,000 a night, which is not bad, is it?
No. I can only dream of that kind of money.
I mean, you can see where the allure comes from, making that much money in such a short space of time. And, she's a self-confessed sort of high school dropout. She was working in a diner.
Yeah. And if it's not like...
It's her choice. She's not hurting herself or anyone.
And it doesn't seem like, they're treated the way that they used to be treated in those kind of environments either. Yeah,
I mean, I will go on to explain that not a lot has changed, unfortunately, at this time. I think that maybe the attitudes of the women had changed, so they were stronger and they were a bit more like, I'm not standing up for this nonsense. But
I think ultimately it comes down to the money side of things, Like you said, she dropped out of high school. She was working in a diner. It was a way for her to survive, but not just survive.
Yeah.
To live.
Exactly.
Making that sort of money, the world's yours.
That's the thing, and she's trying to help out her grandparents as well.
Yeah, so she's got a heart behind it.
Exactly. She said, my mum wasn't able to help me, she told New York Online. Who knows what kind of person I would have been if she was there to back me up. Would I have worked so hard? Would I have hustled so hard the way I did, knowing I had something to fall back on? It's a good question. Rosie soon moved on to bigger opportunities to earn more money at bigger clubs. So she's gone from sort of like her local club onto places like Flash Dancers Club and Larry Flint's Hustler Club in Times Square. She would drive into the city to work at these venues because she didn't live so far away that she couldn't sort of be in the thick of it. And this is where she met a lady called Samantha. The two girls started working together to make money from, quote, mostly Wall Street guys. During this time, their work was completely illegal and above board, and they would earn money from tips and gifts from the male clientele. Okay, so let's take a step back and look at Samantha. There's not as much about her online. There's a lot more about Rosie because she's been a lot more vocal.
Yeah.
I've taken the majority of this from like the famous article that the film was based on, but then I have looked at other articles as well to try and get quite a balanced sort of view. So, born Samantha Barbash, she was a single mother from the Bronx who started dancing at 19 years old. In the New York Times Magazine article, she was described as being stunted to conform to a certain ideal. She'd been shaped by the industry in which she grew up. Her body was Jessica Rabbit curvy, her lips were Angelina Jolie puffy, her hair, which concealed tattoos of a cascade of stars running down her neck, was Cleopatra black. So, just from that description, she does sound very iconic looking, and, you know, I'm sure she sort of got a lot of attention. By the time Rosie met her, Samantha was actually in her 30s, which is sadly seen as old by sort of stripper and dancer standards. But she was one of Hustler's top moneymakers still at that age, which is good for her. Samantha had maintained her dominion in part by mentoring younger dancers, because in contrast to what popular opinion would suggest, it's actually better for these dancers to work together.
Yeah.
Because while most men might be able to keep their wits about them with one scantily clad, gorgeous girl, they tend to lose their senses around 3 or 4. So they start, you know, tipping a bit more, paying for more drinks. Which is why at Hustler and similar clubs, the dancers worked in groups.
Okay.
And also, you know, from a woman's perspective, it seems like that would be safer as well. Because you have, you know, obviously they're in the club and there is security there, but there are champagne rooms, which are the private rooms, and, you know, maybe they're not so safe in there. So working groups sounds like a much better idea. Apparently, everyone wanted to work with Samantha, Rosie recalled, because she had a lot of clients and she knew how to work well. Samantha took Rosie under her wing, introducing her to some of her regular customers, who were mostly Wall Street guys, who, according to Samantha, wanted to have fun and get drunk and party with the girls.
Which one did J-Lo play again?
Samantha. Yeah. At this point in the story, it was 2007, and the gentlemen's clubs weren't as popular as they had been due to a series of mob-related arrests at Scores. That being said, Rosie recalls of Hustler, it was like La La Land in there. We had a guy who is at Guggenheim Partners. He spent $300,000 in 1 week.
Oh my goodness.
He came in 3 times, $100,000 every time he walked in the room. Everyone made $10,000 every time he came in. So it just goes to show you how much money was being spent in these clubs. It's incomprehensible.
Money I will never see in my lifetime.
Well, even when I do see that money in my lifetime, I mean, I'm a woman, so I guess I see things differently, but I wouldn't spend on that. But then I would spend it on cars and things like that. So, you know, each to their own. So let's just get our head around that for a second and accept that we possibly should have made different life decisions because...
Well, yeah, now I'm rethinking everything.
Right? You know, these girls haven't had the best upbringings, but they're making it work for them, you know, and it's dancing. It's an art form.
Yeah.
So there's really nothing wrong with it. So Rosie told New York Magazine that it was hard work and it wasn't always glamorous or lucrative. And despite the girls being the main draw, Rosie explained, traditionally, instead of the clubs paying the dancers pay the clubs for the privilege of working there.
Oh.
Which is so bonkers, and I just think that's so wrong, and it really annoys me.
It's like when you... Well, it's not like that at all, actually. Ignore what I was about to say.
Okay.
Yeah. That wouldn't have made any sense.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So according to the girls, the men were mostly a-holes. Even if they didn't start out that way, they would get drunk and say things like, did your father abuse you? Is that why you do this?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The majority of the clientele were married, but that didn't stop them from asking for things like blowjobs or sex or to be penetrated with a champagne bottle. Not a request anyone would come to expect from a clean-cut family man.
No.
That's the thing, I think. These are gentlemen's clubs. Yes, the girls are dancing. Yes, they might be scantily clad, but that doesn't give people the right to talk to them like that.
No.
Or treat them like that. And it makes me mad that just because they think we'll throw money at them we can say what we like.
Yeah. It's like they're less of a human.
Exactly.
It's not the case at all.
No, that's it. Yeah. But I loved this film.
Yeah, it was very good.
But it did, when I actually, when I read more and found out more, the whole thing just made me quite angry. And the fact that, yes, the gentlemen's clubs were having some sort of cultural movement, but the girls were still being treated like dirt. So that hadn't changed. And, in this sort of time, they were having to pay the clubs to dance there.
It's weird. But it makes no sense to me.
The reason why the men were going in there, and women, were because there's girls dancing there.
Yeah.
So...
you wouldn't be making money if it wasn't for the girls.
Exactly. It's just, it makes me crazy. So...
Still a lot of archaic attitudes.
Oh, completely. And there still is, nothing really changes.
Nothing will change.
It fudged me up in the head a little, Rosie said, of the impact the job had on her. The girls develop a terrible contempt, former schools manager told New York Times magazine. They stop believing men are real. They think they are there for me to manipulate and take money from. Which, if they're being treated like that on the daily, can you really blame them? So, well, if you're going to talk to me like dirt, I may as well take your money because I
will bleed you dry.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. That said, allegedly the dancers preferred the a-holes, and why wouldn't they? There's bound to be something extra satisfying about persuading men who think the girls are trash to spend their time and money in the clubs. Because in the end, the whole situation's turned around on them. Because look at it this way, who's left with no self-respect after splurging $300,000 at Gentleman's Club? Certainly not the dancers.
Yeah. There you go. On what? Nail on the head.
Yeah. Exactly. They would also have regular customers who would come in just to see the girls and talk to them. And they would be nice guys. And, they would often fall in love with the girls and really form an attachment to them.
Oh, but then that can get dangerous, can't
Exactly.
it? Yeah.
That's the thing. Both sides of the coin have pros and cons.
Yeah.
Rosie was studying psychology whilst working and theorised that the reason why Wall Street guys party so hard is because they're not happy with their jobs. You make money, but you're not happy, so you go out and splurge on strip clubs and drinking and drugs. Then the money depletes and you have to make it again. The dancers are the same way. You make money, but then you're depressed, so you end up shopping or going on vacation and the money depletes, so you go back. So it is
a vicious cycle.
For both parties.
Yeah.
Rosie didn't intend to get stuck in this pattern. Despite everything, Rosie did have a lot of ambition, which shows from,
She's studying psychology.
She's studying psychology. She dropped out of school early, but she was being an entrepreneur at school.
Yeah.
She was at a diner. She took notice of the fact that she could make more money.
She's now going back to school.
Yeah. She make more money at a Gentleman's Club. She's then moved on because she thinks, okay, if I'm making this money here, what am I going to make in the city? So, she's not silly. So her plans were thwarted, however, when she became pregnant by her on-again, off-again boyfriend. The pair had split up after her daughter was born, and she needed to earn a decent wage again. So although she took a long break from it because
it's quick, easy money.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's a significant amount of money.
And also, she'd been doing it for a while, so she knew it. So Rosie started by calling the names on what she called her get money list, which were her regular clientele who had fallen for her. So, these weren't the nasty men. These were the ones who sort of developed feelings for her. And she'd obviously met for them she had met them and they'd fallen for her whilst working in the clubs. But unfortunately, none of these leads panned out. So Rosie did go back to Hustler. So she went back to the dancing. She said, "You've got to do what you've got to do," which is true. She's a young mum now, single mum, because the boyfriend's gone.
To provide.
Exactly. Yeah. So she's now got a young mouth to feed. Trouble was, in the time she'd been away to have a baby, things had drastically changed because of the market collapse in 2008. So there's now a depression on. Half of Wall Street were unemployed, and the financial shake-up was such that the other half were actually staying away from the Gentleman's Club champagne rooms. Right. So half of them had disappeared. The other half were reining it in with the spending. When Rosie returned, all the dancers were new too, and the rules seemed to have changed as well. So there's a lot of desperation because obviously the men aren't coming in, the money's not being spent, and this is in her words, there were all these Russian and Colombian girls and they were giving blowjobs for $300, Rosie said, and they were good looking. I was like, I can't compete with this poop. Luckily, Rosie did see one familiar face, Samantha. She wasn't dancing anymore, but she was still at the clubs every night. Samantha was running a crew of attractive girls who would pick up men and bring them into the clubs. And this was known, or is still probably known, as fishing. But Samantha called it marketing. And Samantha seemed to be doing very well out of it. Rosie remembered watching them strutting in and out the champagne room with their red soles flashing in all their nice get-up. I started noticing these bees make a lot of money and they don't even really work, she said. Samantha had found some kind of loophole where I can get paid and not have to actually have sex. Because of the recession, the clubs needed customers, so instead of taking advantage of the girls took charge. So they kind of flipped it on its head. And whenever the door to the champagne rooms opened, Rosie said she would peer in to try and figure out what they were up to in there. And it didn't take her long to cotton on. Like I said, I'm smart, she said. I would see the guy laid out, chilling, and I would be like, because I'd be like, what's going on in there? There's some dude just laid out on the sofa or the floor.
What's he doing, having a kid?
What is he doing? Samantha had built up a big client list from her years of dancing in the clubs, and she used that list to go fishing. So, she'd worked in these prominent clubs. She had built up almost like a black book of these people, and she was PRing.
Yeah.
She was actually marketing.
She was working it.
That's it. Samantha had built up a big client list from years of dancing in the clubs, and she used that to go fishing. She would send a sexy text to guys on her list to see if they were up for a night out. Samantha would often send photos of the beautiful girls in her crew to further persuade them, because a lot of times the clients didn't necessarily remember what Samantha looked like, and vice versa.
And they would be looking for some sort of, they've been hit by financial hardship. They're looking for some sort of release, a way to have fun.
Yeah.
And it probably wouldn't have taken much to tempt them.
Exactly. And as I mentioned before, Samantha was one of the older girls in this crew, so she liked to send pictures of the younger girls to entice these guys. So then if the client expressed interest in meeting up, she'd have one of the girls go meet him. I'm telling you like you haven't seen the film, but I'm telling you like you haven't seen the film.
It's fine.
So they'd then wine and dine them before all the other girls would show up and just completely overwhelm them. So when the man, he was drunk enough, they'd steer him towards one of the clubs that they had a deal with. Samantha had negotiated a lucrative percentage of whatever her clients spent in the clubs. They would then proceed to run up his credit card as far as they could push it. Trouble was, this didn't always go as planned, because sometimes the men wouldn't want to go to a club. So Samantha had to come up with a solution that would guarantee club visits from her clients. A special drink spiked with MDMA and ketamine. So the MDMA made the men happy, and the ketamine messed up their memory.
Yeah.
And they often ended up blacking out,
Ketamine
which
will do that.
is what the girls needed.
Yeah.
It's not right to spike their drinks.
No.
But
I think it's not right for men to do it to women. It's not
exactly,
right for women
that's
to do
the
it to
thing.
men. Yeah.
Men have been doing it to women as well for years. None of it's right.
No.
So, This is what Rosie had seen in the champagne rooms and why the men were laid out.
Yeah.
Because of this special drink. When she figured it all out, she told Samantha she wanted in.
Okay.
Just a sprinkle, Rosie recalled about the spiked drinks, like a pinch of salt. She had no issues with the methods. It sounds so bad to say that we were like drugging people, she said, but it was like normal.
Well, it would have become normal at that point if they were doing it that much.
That's the thing, I think, if you're surrounded by something all the time, and these men in the champagne rooms are usually taking drugs of their own fruition, then possibly the lines can get a bit blurred.
They'd probably be taking drugs anyway, so we'll just give it to them.
Exactly. Just like hello, Reg. Just like we were saying, so according to Rosie, the men targeted were wealthy, and most of them weren't saints. What's an extra 20 grand to them, Rosie said. It wasn't like we pulled them off the street. They had history. They'd been to Hustler, and they'd been to Rick's, and they'd been to Scores. They all walked in ready to party, and we slipped an extra one that they didn't know about, but all of it goes hand in hand, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, So, like we just said, they were normally doing drugs, so the girls didn't see a problem with.
Yeah. And the thing is, you do
drugs.
it that much, you talk yourself into it's not that bad.
No, that's the thing, and it's terrible.
And you start to believe it's not that bad.
Spiking a drink is spiking a drink.
Exactly.
But they've convinced themselves it's
not that bad.
They'd be doing it, and they're almost talking themselves around to the fact that what they're doing is
okay.
wrong.
Yeah.
Even though, of course, it's wrong. You should never ever spike anyone's drink. But they are talking themselves around to the fact that, oh well, they'd be taking drugs anyway, or oh well, just probably to sort of suppress any guilt, because I mean, I would feel terribly. I couldn't do that. I'd feel really guilty. No. A lot of people couldn't do that, and I think they are just trying to talk themselves around, really. Sometimes the men would call and complain about the size of their bill once they realised how much they'd spent, but Samantha would remind them that what a good time that they'd had, according to Rosie, who heard some of the phone calls. You were so happy, don't you remember, Samantha would say. You were tipping everyone. Even if the man was still suspicious, Samantha would remind him that the cost of filing a formal complaint, telling his wife and the police about his partying in the clubs...
it cost him probably a lot more than just his money.
Yeah. And he'd soon realise that it wasn't worth taking it any further. So...
They literally had him by the balls.
Oh, completely. And, in I don't know if Rosie said this or Samantha said this, but the men would just let it go.
Yeah.
Rosie treated this like a real business, and when she joined the crew, she made changes. Rosie organised a schedule, she kept notes on each client, including their personal details and how much had been charged to each of their cards. So, Rosie was very much of the mentality, don't push it too far with these guys. Yeah. Spread it out to enable them to keep it going. That's sort of the impression that I got. She also encouraged the crew to target more upscale bars. My big advantage over the girls is I don't look like a stripper, Rosie said. I look like any girl who could be getting off work, relaxing after a long day by having a glass of wine. So once situated in a bar, she'd look around for a worthy target. She'd check their shoes and their watch and look for a wedding ring, and then she'd pounce. So in the film, the film's good because it is actually quite accurate to the article. I thought it was going to be sort of like wildly different, but it's actually not.
No.
Definitely recommend watching it. And they were saying, you can't tell by a guy's suit. You have to look at their shoes and their watch to see if they've got money, which is a good point.
Don't you check people's shoes?
That's just because I'm fussy about people's shoes. That's not because of...
No, I know. But I think I remember that you always look at people's shoes.
Well, because I used to work in fashion and I used to work in men's fashion at Timberland. And so, I had a thing about men's shoes. Yeah, it was like become a snobby thing, really. I still have it, even though I wear trainers, but there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
Yeah, I do have a thing about shoes. So once situated in a bar, she would look around for a worthy target. I just literally said that, sorry, I'm repeating myself. But just so I'll keep repeating myself. She'd check out their shoes, their watch, look for a wedding ring, and then pounce. So I used to send a group of guys shots from across the room, see which one would come to me, she said. She'd make up a story about where she worked, so she'd sort of claim she was working, like in the business sort of area. And after a few drinks, she'd say, I know, let's go to a strip club. Which, to be fair, I've said that lots of times, usually in Vegas. I actually only ever in Vegas I've said that. But it is the kind of thing that it is...
Oh, let's be wild and mental.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. And, like they were saying, they were having a bit of a moment. I know that this is a financial crisis, but the whole cultural aspect of it was having a moment. And I think that has continued. And the novelty of... next time I go to Vegas, I am going to Peppermint Hippo. Because I'm so desperate to go there, and I always run out of time. And to be fair, last time I didn't have enough money because I'd like to tip the girls,
Yeah.
And I've always wanted to go, and next time I will go. But anyway, so it's not out of the ordinary to say that. Something I would say. Sometimes the men would want sex, but prostitution was what Rosie and Samantha had joined the business to avoid, so that was no go for them. that definitely wasn't part of their plan, and it wasn't something, they didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
They were being successful in their nefarious ways without sex.
That,
yeah. Their tactics were working. The men would sometimes spend 30, 40, 50 grand a night. So the girls were making big money. Eventually they wanted to outsource the fishing to more girls so they could make even more money. So instead of the sort of like the little crew, they're kind of building it. So they ended up contracting sex workers whose adverts they found on the back page of Craigslist. If the girls needed a makeover, Rosie would take them shopping and for new clothes and makeup. She trained them in etiquette and laid down the rules. No drinking and no drugs. She taught them fake drinking and fake sniffing, so it looked like they were sort of in on the party with the men. And once the man's signature was on the bill, they could party. But up until that point, they had to stay focused. Yeah. Rosie would then call the bank or credit card company to verify security details. Things like the last 4 digits of social security number, the man's mother's maiden name, his last purchases, their name, their location, and how much was being charged. Which, to me, that seems like that would be really hard to get that information out of somebody.
Like your mother's maiden name. And your social security code, for God's sake.
Exactly.
That's kind of the same thing as a national insurance number, isn't it?
The American version, exactly.
Like,
but
why would you, because if they were to ask for that information, the person would turn around and be like, well, why do you need that?
Exactly. But they didn't, because getting all this information from a guy who was completely off his nuts apparently wasn't difficult.
No, I can imagine it's not in that respect.
No, and I did it right in front of them, she said. I would ask them really quickly, what's your mother's maiden name? What's your social security number? And they'd give it up.
Surprised they could remember if they're that.
Yeah, I know, right? I wouldn't. No. I'd be like, I have no idea.
I can't remember things when I'm sober, so...
I don't know her.
Don't know her.
At the end of the night, Rosie calculated the breakdown. She knew exactly what cut went to who. So she was very much the businesswoman in this crew. Yeah. She was very business-minded. And although, it definitely wasn't right what the girls were doing, she was running it as if it was a legit
business
venture, yeah. So with Samantha and Rosie's combined skills, business was absolutely booming. They looked after the girls who worked with them, even buying one of their favourites, a pair of Louboutins for Christmas. They were making the clubs money and they were in charge of their own lives. So to them, it was a big success. And from a monetary standpoint, it was a big success. Yeah. They were making a lot of money. But the trouble was, their success was noticed by other dancers who wanted a piece of the pie. So copycat groups appeared.
Oh, no.
Because, there's still an impact from this financial crisis that happened. And these copycat groups were fishing for their own rich men to take to the clubs. So this meant that the market became overcrowded. Yeah. So the girls had to innovate and think of something to either add on or do differently.
The thing is, if more and more people are doing it, more and more people are going to notice what's
exactly that's it on, I mean, Rosie's obviously a smart cookie. She's noticed straight away and thought, what's going on? It's all it takes is a couple of whispers and do you know what those girls are doing, or we should do that. So they started working in Queens, Rosie said. I saw there was a market for in between. You bring the strippers to the guy. It was good and we had a monopoly on it for a while. See, the thing with this is, obviously, when they're in the clubs, they do have a bit more security. Yeah. Because they're in the clubs. To me, it sounds like it's starting to get a little bit more risky. Mm-hmm. Going to hotel rooms or private parties, whatever it might be. Yeah. Because you haven't got the security, the club staff, So to me, it sounds more risky. But they bought themselves designer clothes. Rosie had a small collection of luxury cars. She did like her cars, and she would rotate them. I'm going to get like that one day. I'm going to have a rotation of awesome cars.
Just cars on a Lazy Susan.
Yeah. You can actually get giant Lazy Susans for cars. And they didn't think twice about spending $1,000 on a pair of shoes. And they also looked after their families. Because don't forget, Samantha had a daughter. Rosie had a daughter. Rosie looked after a family. They did look after each other. So although their morals might have been questionable in some areas, they were good in others.
Yeah. They usually go into that kind of line of work to provide for their families.
Well, exactly. This was the whole, that's why Rosie had gone back to dancing because, and she didn't have an education. Yes, she'd started sort of studying and things like that, but obviously she then had the baby. Life happens, things happen, and she's then got those costs. Yeah. So, it's going to just let you know that I'm drinking from my Las Vegas cup, as is Alison. Voila. But
Las Vegas placement there.
Oh yeah, always. If Vegas would like to sponsor us,
can you imagine?
So happy. One day I want a holiday apartment in Vegas. I love it that much.
That would be amazing.
It would be so good.
So 6 months out of the year there.
Yeah. I don't know if I could be there for 6 months straight.
Okay, maybe like
I'd probably go mad.
Yeah.
But I could go there like regularly.
Yeah.
That'd be quite cool. So cracks were starting to appear in the group and things were getting out of control because Rosie and Samantha were basically running a team of sex workers because they had expanded the group and they had decided to employ sex workers who are going to have a slightly different view on the job
and they're
than the dancers.
If I can get extra money by doing those things, which is something that I'm used to doing anyway.
That's the thing. And, so they are running this team of sex workers, strippers and thieves. They weren't the most reliable group of people. No. That is generalising, but they're not going to be, are they? Some of them will be, some of them won't be.
Well, I know it wasn't legit, but they tried to make it as legit as possible, Samantha and Rosie.
Yeah. Especially Rosie, more so Rosie. Mm-hmm. So these girls wouldn't show up for work, they'd be intoxicated, they would get beat up by their boyfriends and had to go to hospital, Rosie said. The regular girls who started this whole venture would sometimes disappear for weeks because the thing is, it is illegal what they're doing and it's starting to take a toll on some of the girls. They are starting to feel, guilt and remorse and things like that. So tensions between Rosie and Samantha began. With their crew unreliable at best, Samantha looked for other girls to fill their spaces, but she really did have a soft spot for ex-dancers with problems. Mm-hmm. And these were not the kind of girls Rosie trusted or wanted on the team. They're suffering because the girls aren't reliable, but then Samantha's finding girls who are probably going to be even more unreliable.
This is the thing, if they just stuck with the initial... But then again, hindsight's a magical thing.
Absolutely. Rosie was a businesswoman and Samantha had no business sense, according to Rosie. For example, one of their clients, Rick, a banker they'd met, Rosie said he was good looking, had money, was nice, and he wasn't a pervert, which is a bonus. Rosie suggested the gang would be better off by padding out Rick's bills over time rather than banging him out all at once. Yeah. But after Samantha found out Rick had a credit limit of $50,000, that was that. Rick was absolutely furious and he never returned a text again. So they've then lost that client.
They screwed it for themselves.
Yeah, getting greedy. That's the problem with these girls, Rosie explained of her partner, shaking her head. I see the forest, they just wanted a $50,000 tree. Mm-hmm. This meant they'd burnt through their list of regular clients and were now dealing mostly with strangers, and these guys were unpredictable. Because of this, the girls got greedy, which you can kind of see it coming, can't you?
You take a bite and you want more.
Yeah, that's it. And, it's illegal what they're doing, so you're going to get problems. Yeah. It's not like you guys are all working in an office. Rosie said, because of the amount of stress we had to endure, we were just like, you know what? These people are fudging, peeing me off. Just for that, I'm going to max out his credit card like a penalty. You're going to be left with a zero balance, zero credit line, just for being annoying. We needed to make it worth it.
Spiting themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's,
They kind of screwed the pooch.
This is never going to be... It's not a proper business. It's illegal. So it can't be a long-term venture. But because people are getting greedy and they can't rely on people...
It's even less longer term than what it could have been.
Exactly. So they kept going, but their attitudes had become reckless and cruel. One night, Rosie and Samantha drove out to a fancy Japanese restaurant in Manhasset to meet a guy. He worked in finance. I'm going to call him Fred. And he'd met Samantha one night at Hustler. He'd been going through a tough time. He'd lost his house in a hurricane.
Oh.
It had been totaled. And he'd separated from the mother of his child. So he was having a bit of a rubbish time.
A good time.
Yeah. Rosie got him a drink from the bar and they had genuine conversation about what he was going through. You know, she was a single parent. She could relate. It was all fine up until they piled into Rosie's car and they took him to the Roadhouse. This was another club that they had a deal with. And Fred was actually interviewed for the New York Times piece too. And he said of his experience, I couldn't tell you about what the place looked like or anything. The room was square. There was a table. It was horrible, he recalled. But I was so messed up, I couldn't even make an angry face.
Wow.
That must be so scary to just not be in control like that.
But no, you're not in control.
Yeah,
it's
it's just, it's horrible. And they cleaned him out completely.
Sounds like they overdid it with the drugging as well.
I think they possibly did on a few of them because, you know, they're spiking drinks. It's never going to go.
Your pinch is different to my pinch.
Well, that's it, exactly.
Pinch of salt, bucket.
There we go. And you know what we're like with salt.
Well,
so
you know.
I can tell you exactly how it was, Rosie said. $17,000. Sorry, she said how much it was. $17,000, $5,000 on his Chase debit card, and then he had an airlines card. It wasn't much, you know, in comparison to what they could have been earning, but it was a lot to him.
Yeah.
He pleaded, can you guys please credit my debit card? My mortgage payment is on there. Rosie remembered this was the first time she felt any guilt about what they'd done. But Samantha's like, you can't feel bad, she said. If we don't do it, someone else is going to do it.
Yeah, but at least you then you're not the reason for it.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not any kind of reason. And as you can imagine, New York City Police Department received countless calls about all kinds of things, including guys getting wasted and their credit cards being run up at a strip club. And the unofficial view was the calls weren't really taken seriously.
No.
You know, a lot of the times the guys, they have no proof.
Trying to cover the tracks so the wife doesn't find out or something like that, yeah.
You know, it might be a case of
or trying to get money back.
The wife has found a statement, so they're like, well, I've got to save my butt. So they ring the police in front of her and be like, this is an outrage. This didn't happen. Just to almost try and prove that they didn't do what they did. Who knows? But when a man called and said he had evidence, although they were sceptical, they did look into it.
Okay.
So the man had a recording of a conversation between himself and one of the girls. And he said, I just wanted to know what happened to me, the guy begged, until the woman on the other end of the line finally gave in and told him he'd been fleeced by a gang of ex-strippers who had spiked his drink with narcotics, just a sprinkle.
So was she a member of this? And
yes.
She just gave it up. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that not entrapment?
I mean, it is. Yeah, it is. But I know that the rules in America for entrapment are different from different to here, and it differs in the States, I believe. Yeah. So.
Okay.
It was very weird, said one of the cops later. If it wasn't for the tape, said another, I would have been like, dude, I think you're effing full of poop.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because you would be. You just think you're just trying to save your butt.
Yeah.
You've done
or trying to get
thing.
some money back from it. You spent too much.
Yeah. You're regretting it. Now, you know. And that's the thing. The majority of the times, that probably was the case.
Yeah.
But they had the tape. And soon enough, they picked up the girl on the tape who confessed immediately. And it was one of Samantha's charity cases.
Oh, no.
Unfortunately. We're going to call her Jenny. Jenny was one of the girls that Rosie was wary of, and Rosie had every right to be suspicious because Jenny had been in trouble with the police before. So she was easily persuaded to help with a sting operation one night to try and catch the crew in the act. Which, again, I don't know the rules of entrapment, but again, that feels like entrapment.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I'm not a lawyer or a police person.
No, I have no idea with the law. Especially American law.
Especially American law. And obviously it's different
And there will be loopholes, and there will be, yeah.
That's it. Rosie knew something was up that night. She'd been called in by Samantha to help Jenny along with another girl, but Jenny was acting off. She kept trying to make the other two girls spike the client's drink, and when they wouldn't, Jenny became frustrated, which made Rosie even more on edge.
Yeah.
Because you'd be like, hang on a minute, why are you all of a sudden not doing this?
Yeah. I had no problem with it before.
That's it. So in the end, Jenny ended up putting quite a lot in his drink, and after the guy passed out, randomly, security immediately knocked on the door but didn't find anything on the girls. And afterwards, as
Gave it all to him.
yeah, exactly. So when they were sort of left they were speeding down the West Side Highway. Rosie was convinced she was being followed. She probably was. It was a close call, and the girls should have called off and let the investigation go cold because, you know, it had been a failed sting operation.
Yeah.
So they should have just kept their heads down. But Samantha didn't believe Rosie. She thought she was being paranoid.
Right.
So, yeah, they didn't take that. That was quite a sort of big warning to go, do you know what?
We'll wait for this to settle.
Yeah,
then we'll start up
before
again.
anyone gets really hurt, let's face
They probably could have financially taken a break.
Yeah.
They probably had enough money to be able to take a break.
That's the thing. And when I was reading, you know, various things that Rosie was saying, she was sort of earning the money almost was a bit like an addiction because she'd be like, right, I'm going to earn 100 grand and then I'm going to stop.
Yeah.
Then she'd earn that 100 grand and she'd think, right, okay.
Just a little bit more.
Little bit more. And, you know, it's almost like gambling, and it kind of was, really.
Well, it's almost like drugs as well. You think, like, especially like if you say you're gonna stop, or you're gonna go into rehab or something. It's like, oh, I'm just gonna have one more just before I go in.
Exactly.
You know, that last final thing.
Just one more.
And then it never is. Well, it is for some, obviously. But yeah.
The Drug Enforcement Agency did not confirm or deny having run a failed sting operation, but at that point, the DEA couldn't find many other victims to press charges because men don't want to admit to being victimised by women, one of the officers revealed, which, you know, I mean, the amount of women that don't come forward, of course it's going to be the same for men. So,
if not more so.
Exactly. And the thing is, you know, like they were saying, they get a lot of phone calls of men saying that, you know, oh my goodness, I've been in a strip club and my payments are crazy, I don't recognise them.
Yeah.
Just because of the environment they're in, they're going to be less believed. And, you know, that's not right, but unfortunately that's the case.
And if they've still got those sort of old school views of women.
Well, exactly, yeah. Many of these stories would end up in the tabloids, and there was no sympathy for the men who supposedly ended up drunk and drugged in Hustler or Scores, being taken advantage of by strippers. It's basically how it was seen. But one story in the Post in April 2014 about Zayed Yunan, a cardiologist who Scores allegedly had failed to pay a $135,000 bill he'd racked up during 4 visits to the club, caught the attention of the police. The doctor's story had become a joke, but detectives recognised the MO straight away, and it was obviously very similar to what had been happening, and they'd tried to...
they're seeing it a bit more often being reported through, so maybe we'll start to look into it a bit more seriously, that sort of thing,
You know, and allegedly they did try and get this sting operation, so they were probably reeling from that and thinking, I've got to get them, so... When you look at it out of context, it seems like he's making it up, which it does. It's like, yeah, all right, mate. You know, he's been back 4 times. You know, you are going to go, all right, like, you know, whatever. One of the detectives said, but the dates were so tight together, he didn't know about the charges until it was all over.
Yeah.
So when you look at the story from afar and you think, oh, well, he went back 4 times. Yes, but he went back 4 times extremely close together. Yeah. So close that he didn't know the charges had come out until he'd been 4 times.
Yeah.
So...
It just seems a bit stupid on the girl's part.
They'd gotten greedy, hadn't they, at this point? They really had.
That's what it is, yeah.
And sadly, he actually thought he was dating one of the girls.
Oh.
So he, you know, if you're dating someone, you're not going to want to think they're stealing money from you. That's not
drugging you or anything.
That's
like
it. It's not where your mind's going to go for.
You're going to hang out with her and her friends.
Exactly. I'm just having a great time. Unan told the police that he'd met a girl at a restaurant on Park Avenue. She claimed she was a nursing student and introduced him to her relatives, Samantha and another girl from the crew. Their dates had ended a little fuzzily, he said, but it wasn't until he got a phone call from an American Express alerting him to $135,000 in charges from Scores that he realised something was very wrong.
The thing is, they're taking them to the same clubs as well.
Yeah.
Like, 4 times to one club.
Yeah. According to Rosie, initially Samantha was happy about the attention the doctor was getting in the press. She was like, good, now he'll pay his bill. But Rosie had a bad feeling about it, and her feeling was right. Because, you know, the heat is on them now. Come on, you know, this is, you've been really pushing it as it is, and now you're really, you know, you're getting greedy, you're getting careless. It's all over the press.
Yeah, that kind of thing you need to keep sort of under...
Yeah, they got complacent, like a lot of criminals do with many other things.
Keep getting away with something.
Yeah,
you do get complacent, you get cocky, you get arrogant.
That's the thing. And whereas I think Rosie did see this sort of failed sting operation as a bit of a warning, Samantha didn't seem to see it like that. So on the 9th of June in 2014, the police arrested Samantha at a cash machine in her neighbourhood. Samantha said, they were like, get in the car, you're under arrest. The neighbours were staring. I'm like having a panic attack. I mean, I would be too. Mm-hmm. 2 more of the regular crew were picked up next, and Rosie was last to be taken in by the police. In the car, she and the policeman she was with bantered, who was basically like, how did you get wrapped up in this, Rosie recalled. You're smart, you're pretty. Rosie replied, maybe when all this is said and done, I'll take you out for a drink. In the rearview mirror, his face changed. I ain't never taken a drink from you, the policeman replied. Rosie laughed. Don't worry, hun, she said. You don't have enough money for me to take. In addition to the doctor, the police had persuaded 3 other victims to testify, all professional men who were really terrified their names were going to get out. Yeah. And with this evidence, the charges were filed against the women of forgery, conspiracy, grand larceny and assault. Mm-hmm. So they were in trouble. They were in trouble. Despite everything, the girls seemed unmoved. They thought the police were going after 4 hard-working women with difficult backgrounds, or because a prominent doctor, as Samantha put it, had complained that he'd been taken advantage of, which...
That's the thing, how do you prove it?
Yeah, they all maintained that was rubbish. Samantha had met the doctor back at Hustler, where allegedly he was a regular. So she had known him before, and he'd been known to frequent those clubs, right, which makes his argument slightly more difficult. Yeah. He's a scumbag like the rest of them, she said. These guys are all over these girls, she said of her clientele. They get effed up, they know what the hell they're doing. Mm-hmm. Samantha was of the opinion that the girls hadn't done anything wrong and that the whole situation was nothing compared to the behaviour men got away with on a regular basis. I mean, I can see both sides. Yeah. What they did wasn't right at all. But then I should imagine they've been treated pretty poorly as well. It doesn't make it okay at all. I'm not saying it's okay. But you can
understand why they would start to feel, as you said earlier, contempt.
That's it. And then
trying to get their own back.
And then, as you were saying, obviously they're starting to get away with these things. Yeah. So it just all go. It's a big snowball.
And they're getting a lot out of it.
Yeah. They're buying cars. They're buying shoes.
You can live with that kind of money.
Yeah. You know, their wardrobes were lined with Gucci, Chanel, all these things. So the thing is, they've ended up getting used to it. So no, it's not right. Yeah. But they've become accustomed to these amazing things now.
And like you said, they probably talked themselves into not feeling the guilt as much.
That's the thing. You know, and if they have had some sort of really awful instances with these guys in champagne rooms in the past, that's what they're going to probably relate back to and go, yeah, you know, even if it's not that particular guy who did it.
Ends up being a psychological thing.
Yeah, completely. Ultimately, Rosie and Samantha were primarily sentenced to 5 years of probation each, while the other 2 girls received additional weekend jail time for a period of 4 months alongside their 5-year probationary period.
So they got nothing.
Pretty much. They all pleaded guilty to charges including conspiracy, assault and grand larceny. So where are the girls now?
Fine, apparently, because they didn't even... That's barely even a slap on the wrist.
Mm-hmm. Rosie and Samantha no longer speak.
Okay.
Rosie is a stay-at-home mum and wrote a book called The Sophisticated Hustler, which I really want to read.
Yeah. Would they have had to give any money back? I suppose.
It didn't say anything about that.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it didn't say anything about that. Yeah. She also attended the film's premiere.
Oh.
So she was there, like, you know, and she apparently posted about it on Instagram. I couldn't find her Instagram, but apparently she happily endorsed it. Samantha opened a Medispa that offers plastic surgery and cosmetic procedures. Allegedly, she threatened to sue the production company behind Hustlers, claiming that they were making money off her story and that details were incorrect, leading to allegations of defamation of character. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things she contested that were in the film. You know, she said she never danced on the poles and, you know, she was a host, she wasn't a dancer, things like
but... it's Hollywood, isn't it? They're gonna...
Well, that's it. Yeah, exactly. But reading through, because it is quite a long article that the film is based on, and I love how the film takes that and sort of puts the viewer in the position of the interviewer. Yeah. So you feel like you're interviewing the girls and finding out their story. It's really clever, and I highly recommend watching the film.
Watching that again soon. Do you want to watch it?
It is very. I'll happily watch it with you tonight. But I just thought it was brilliant, and I love J-Lo in it, and I know that's not the point that should be from this thing, but I'm looking at it from a pop culture film side of things, and it made me dig out my Hustler t-shirt. But yeah, don't drug people.
Yeah, and don't fleece them.
But so that is the story of the real Hustlers.
Loved it.
Yeah, I just thought it was something different because
I was quite quiet through it because I was just genuinely sort of engrossed in the story.
Yeah, it is a really good story, and you know, there's not a massive connection with the cars apart from the fact that Rosie loves her cars. And in the film, when they're done with the guys at the clubs, they put the guys into taxis and send them home. Yeah. This wasn't mentioned in the article, and I couldn't find that mentioned in other articles. So I don't know if that was fact or fiction. Okay. But I quite liked the fact that, they did drug them, they did fleece them, but they made sure they got home in a taxi. So there we go. That is the story of the real Hustlers.
Oh, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. I really enjoyed telling it. Yeah. It inspired me to wear leopard print and my Hustler t-shirt. I did have jeans on, but Reggie had pee-pee on me, so I had to change
and them. I was going to wear the same hat as you today, so...
One day that will happen.
Oh, of course it will.
One day that will happen.
We've done these kinds of things.
We have, and we don't mind. We kind of love it.
Yeah. So I suppose we should probably update viewers and listeners that we have decided that we're only going to keep random facts, get in the bins, and get pocket to Spooky Chat. So this is it.
This is it.
We'd like to say thank you very much to Goober at Park Lane Studios for the sound, the production, video, everything.
Lights, camera, action.
Life. Thank you.
And if you want to email us with spooky stories, if you want to listen to us, watch us, find us on the socials and or buy our merch, or all of the above, go to linktree/Cars on the Macabre, and all the stuff's on there.
Yeah. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, download, comment. Show us your support if you do indeed support us.
Yay!
We'd love to know that you do.
Sorry. Thank you very much for listening, and definitely go watch that film because it's on Netflix. You may as well.
But until next time,
stay spooky bitches.